Basketball legend. Michael Jordan has given the world countless memorable moments on the court, but his most meaningful play may be the one nobody saw coming. When the billionaire superstar decided to surprise his 92-year-old grandmother, Lula May, with a $10 million gift, he couldn't have anticipated that she would have an even bigger surprise waiting for him, one that would reveal the true source of his legendary greatness. Michael Jordan sat in his Chicago mansion, surrounded by the glow of trophy cases that captured his legendary basketball career. Outside, the wind swept across Lake Michigan, but inside, it was quiet except for the soft ticking of a grandfather clock, a gift from his grandmother years ago. Today, basketball was the furthest thing from his mind. Spread across his mahogany desk were old family photos, some faded, others worn at the edges from being handled so often. His fingers stopped on a particular picture. An elderly woman with deep laugh lines and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom in the world. Grandma, Lula May, she gave me everything, Michael whispered to himself, tracing the outline of her face with his finger. The photo showed Lula May standing outside her modest white house in Wallace, North Carolina. The same house where she'd raised him and his siblings after his grandfather died when Michael was just a little boy. The same house she still lived in at 92 years old, despite Michael's many offers to buy her something bigger. Michael remembered how she worked as a school cafeteria worker during the day and cleaned the local bank offices at night. He recalled how, despite being bone-tired, she still cooked Sunday dinner for everyone. Fried chicken, collard greens, and sweet potato pie that made your mouth water just thinking about it. "Time to pay you back, Grandma," Michael said carefully, placing the photo in the center of the desk. He reached for his phone and called his assistant. "Marcus, it's time," Michael said firmly. "Let's do this for Grandma Lula." "Everything's ready whenever you are, Mr. Jordan," Marcus replied. "Just say the word." For months, they had been planning a surprise for Michael's grandmother. Not just any surprise, a $10 million gift. But Michael didn't want to just hand her a check. That wasn't personal enough. That wasn't worthy of what Lula May had given him. "Book the jet for tomorrow morning," Michael instructed. "And make sure everyone understands this has to be kept quiet. If word gets back to Grandma Lula before we're ready, the surprise will be ruined." "Don't worry, sir. Your family in North Carolina knows the plan. Mayor Ferrier has been very helpful in keeping things under wraps in Wallace." Michael smiled, thinking of the small-town mayor who had been so excited to help with the project. In Wallace, a town of fewer than 4,000 people, keeping a secret wasn't easy. Yet somehow, they'd managed to keep this one. "And the legal papers?" Michael asked. "Are they ready?" Mr. Weiland finalized everything yesterday. "The trust is set up exactly how you wanted it." Michael nodded to himself. The trust would ensure that Lula May never had to worry about money again. But there was more to the surprise than just money. Much more. After hanging up, Michael walked to his window. The Chicago skyline stretched before him, lights twinkling in the evening darkness. He was worth over $1 billion now. He owned restaurants, car dealerships, and part of the Charlotte Hornets basketball team. He had houses in Florida, Utah, and North Carolina. He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, but he never forgot where he came from, or who helped him get there. His mind drifted back to a hot summer day in Wallace when he was 12 years old. He'd wanted a pair of expensive basketball shoes that all the other kids had. Grandma Lula couldn't afford them, but she didn't say no. Instead, she took on extra cleaning jobs for 3 weeks straight. When she finally handed him the shoebox, her hands were raw from scrubbing floors. "You work hard for what you want in this life, Michael," she had told him. Nothing comes easy, but nothing worth having should come easy. Those words shaped him. Through high school, when he was cut from the varsity basketball team. Through college, when workouts were brutal. Through his NBA career, when critics said he couldn't win championships. Grandma Lula's wisdom guided him. Michael returned to his desk and picked up another photo. This one showing Lula May sitting in the stands at his first Chicago Bulls game. She'd never flown on a plane before that day, and she was terrified. But she got on that plane because nothing would have kept her from seeing her grandson's NBA debut. "I wish Dad could see this," Michael said softly. His father, James Jordan, had been murdered in 1993, a loss that had shaken Michael to his core and led to his first retirement from basketball. His dad never got to see the second three-peat of championships or Michael's life after basketball. But Grandma Lula was still here, still sharp as a tack, still living independently in that small house in Wallace. Michael opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was his first paycheck from McDonald's, where he'd worked as a teenager. Lula May had told him to save it. "You never know when you might need to remember where you started," she'd said. He had saved it, along with other mementos from his journey. Now, he would use this box as part of his surprise for her. Michael spent the next hour reviewing the plans. One last time. The trust paperwork, the blueprints, the arrangements for the family gathering. Everything had to be perfect. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister Dolores. "Just talk to Grandma. She doesn't suspect a thing. See you tomorrow, little brother." Michael smiled. Tomorrow would change everything for Lula May. After a lifetime of giving to others, she would finally receive something that matched the size of her heart. As he prepared for bed, Michael felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach, something he rarely experienced anymore. He had performed under pressure countless times on the basketball court. He had made billion-dollar business decisions. But this was different. This was Grandma Lula. "I hope she likes it," he whispered as he turned out the light. "I hope she understands what this means." Because Michael wasn't just giving Lula May money. He was giving her a legacy that would last long after both of them were gone. A legacy worthy of the woman who had shaped him into the man he had become. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, his mind racing with memories of growing up in Wallace. The digital clock beside his bed flashed 2:17 a.m. when he finally gave up, slipped on his robe, and walked to his home office. He turned on a small lamp and pulled out an old photo album that his mother had put together for him years ago. The first page showed a skinny boy with knobby knees standing in front of a small white house with green shutters. Lula May's house on Duplin Street. "Look how small I was," Michael whispered, smiling at the image of his younger self. He turned the pages slowly, watching himself grow up in pictures. There he was at age 7, holding a basketball almost too big for his small hands. There he was at 10, arm in arm with his brother Larry, both of them grinning with gap-toothed smiles. And there was Grandma Lula in the background of so many photos, sometimes cooking, sometimes gardening, always watching over her family. Michael's mind drifted back to the dirt basketball court where he and Larry would play until it was too dark to see the ball. It wasn't much, just a hoop nailed to a tree with a patched-up dirt area underneath. But it was where his love for the game had started. "You're gonna hurt yourself playing in the dark," Grandma Lula would call from the porch. But she never made them come inside until they were ready. She understood their passion. Michael remembered the sound of Lula May's old Buick pulling up to Emsley A. Laney High School, where she'd come to watch him play. She'd walk slowly up the bleachers, her purse clutched tightly under her arm, nodding, to the other parents as she found her seat. Then came the day Coach Pop Herring cut him from the varsity team his sophomore year. Michael had come home devastated, tears streaming down his face. "You come home crying about getting cut?" Grandma Lula had said, her hands on her hips. "Jordans don't quit. Failure just means you need to try harder, Michael." The next day, she'd walked with him back to Coach Herring's office. She didn't speak for Michael or argue his case. She simply stood behind him as he asked the coach what he needed to do to make the team next year. "She taught me to face disappointment head-on," Michael said to himself, running his finger over a photo of Lula May sitting in the stands at one of his high school games after he'd made the team. He never forgot those words about Jordan's not quitting. They pushed him to practice harder, to prove himself, to become the player who would later be known as the greatest of all time. Michael turned the page to find a newspaper clipping from when he hit the game-winning shot in the 1982 NCAA championship for the University of North Carolina. Beside it was a photo of Lula May hugging him after the game, tears of pride in her eyes. That woman rode a bus all the way to New Orleans to see that game, Michael remembered. She couldn't afford a plane ticket, so she'd spent 20 hours on a Greyhound bus. She never complained about the long journey or the uncomfortable seats. She just wanted to be there for her grandson's big moment. Michael got up and walked to his trophy room, flipping on the light. 6 NBA championship trophies gleamed under special lighting. 6 rings to match them sat in a glass case nearby. Grandma Lula had watched every one of those championship games on her small TV, even staying up late when games went into overtime on the West Coast. She never had much money for luxuries, but she'd splurged on a bigger TV once Michael made it. To the NBA. "I need to see my grandbaby clearly when he plays," she'd told everyone. Michael picked up his first championship ring, remembering how he'd brought it to Wallace to show Grandma Lula. She'd held it carefully, as if it might break, then handed it back to him. "It's real pretty, Michael," she'd said. "But it's not as important as you being a good man." That was Lula May, always keeping him grounded, always reminding him that character mattered more than accomplishments. She'd been there through all the important moments of his life. When he got his basketball scholarship to North Carolina, when he was drafted by the Chicago Bulls, when he won his first championship. She was there through the heartbreak of his father's death and his first retirement from basketball. "She never asked for anything," Michael said aloud to the empty room. "Not a penny, not a thing." His brothers and sisters had all offered to buy her a new house over the years, but she always refused. "This house holds my memories," she'd say. "I raised my children here. I raised all you grandchildren here when your mama needed help. I don't need anything fancy." Michael remembered how the roof had leaked one year, and he'd sent a crew to replace it. Lula May had been upset at first, not wanting charity, but she'd eventually accepted it as a gift from a grandson who could afford it. "Just fix the roof," she'd told the workers. "Don't add nothing extra. I don't need no skylights or fancy shingles." That was 20 years ago. Now, at 92, she still lived independently in that same house, still tended her small garden, still cooked Sunday dinner for any family members who could make it. But Michael knew she deserved something special, something that would honor her and help others, just as she had always done. He returned to his bedroom as the first hints of dawn appeared through the windows. In just a few hours, they would fly to North Carolina. In just a day, he would give Lula May the surprise of her life. As Michael finally drifted off to sleep, he smiled. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Tomorrow, he would finally be able to show Grandma Lula just how much she meant to him. Not just with money, but with a gift that captured everything she'd taught him about giving back. Michael's last thought before sleep claimed him was of Lula May's face. Not as she appeared in the recent photos, aged and weathered by time, but as she looked in his. Childhood memories, strong, determined, and filled with unconditional love for the grandson who would grow up to become a legend. The next morning arrived quickly. Michael boarded his private jet at Chicago O'Hare Airport just after 8 a.m. The sleek G650 with its custom interior was a far cry from the Greyhound bus his grandmother had taken to watch him play in college. With him were his small team, his assistant, Marcus, his lawyer Tom Weiland, and his old friend from North Carolina, Buzz Peterson. "You ready for this?" Buzz asked as they settled into the butter-soft leather seats. Buzz had been Michael's roommate at UNC and had known Lula May almost as long as Michael had. He understood what this meant. "I think so," Michael replied. "I just hope she accepts it." Buzz clapped him on the shoulder. "She might put up a fight at first, but she'll come around." They carried special legal papers and plans for Lula May's surprise. As the jet climbed through the clouds, Michael felt something he rarely experienced anymore: nervousness. His palms were actually sweating. "What if she doesn't accept it?" he asked Buzz as they flew over Ohio. "You know how proud she is." Buzz smiled. "She's proud, but she loves you. She'll understand what this means to you." Michael wasn't so sure. Grandma Lula always taught him to be humble. She never cared about fancy things. Even when Michael first became rich and famous, she still used coupons at the grocery store and darned her own socks. "No sense in wasting good money," she'd say. "Tom." Weiland spread some documents on the table between them. "We've structured this exactly how you wanted it, Michael. Half the money goes directly to her for whatever she wants. The other half is for the community center that will bear her name." Michael nodded. "And she'll have control over how the center's money is spent?" "Absolutely," Tom confirmed. "She'll chair the board, though we've set it up so others can help with the day-to-day management, given her age. She might be 92, but her mind is sharper than all of ours put together," Michael said with a chuckle. The plane began its descent into Wilmington International Airport, the closest airport to Wallace. Through the window, Michael could see the green patchwork of eastern North Carolina, farmland, forests, and the occasional small town. "Home," he said softly. A black SUV with tinted windows waited on the tarmac when they landed. As they loaded their bags, Michael put on a baseball cap and sunglasses. It wasn't just about avoiding fans. He didn't want word to get back to his grandmother that he was in town. The surprise had to be perfect. "It's been a while since I've been back here," Michael said as they drove away from the airport. The landscape gradually changed from Wilmington's coastal development to more rural scenes. They passed farms with tobacco and corn, small country churches, and roadside produce stands. Wallace was a small town where everyone knew everyone. Nothing happened without the whole town talking about it. That's why Michael had to be careful. With his plan, "Did you talk to Mayor Ferrier?" Michael asked Marcus as they drove. "Yes, sir. I met with him last week. He's keeping your visit quiet, but he's helped set everything up just like you wanted." "Charlie Ferrier," Michael said, shaking his head with a smile. "He was the high school principal when I was growing up. Used to catch me skipping class to play basketball. Now he's helping you build a multi-million-dollar community center," Buzz said. "Funny how life works out." They drove past green fields and small farms. Michael pointed out places from his childhood to Tom, who had never been to Wallace before. "That's the McDonald's where I got my first job," Michael said. "And over there is the community center where I played my first organized basketball game." The current community center was small and outdated. By next year, it would be replaced by a state-of-the-art facility named after Lula Mae Jordan. As they approached Wallace, Michael grew quieter, taking in the familiar sights of his hometown. Not much had changed. The same water tower, the same Main Street with its small businesses, the same feeling of community that had shaped him. They turned onto Duplin Street, and Michael instinctively looked for his grandmother's house, though they weren't going there yet. As they drove past, he saw Lula Mae's neighbors, the Hendersons and the Williamses, sitting on their porches. They waved at the SUV, not knowing who was inside. Michael smiled, remembering how Mrs. Henderson always gave him homemade cookies, and Mr. Williams taught him how to change a car tire. "Almost every adult in this town helped raise me in some way," Michael told Tom, "but nobody gave more than Grandma Lula." The SUV pulled into the parking lot of the Wallace Inn, a small hotel where Michael had arranged for them to stay. The owner, Mrs. Darlene, was waiting at the door. "Welcome home, Michael," she said quietly, as they got out of the car. "Your grandmother has no idea you're here. Your secret's safe with me." Michael hugged her. "Thanks, Mrs. Darlene. I appreciate it. Your grandmother still makes the best sweet potato pie in 3 counties, you know," she added with a wink. "Yes, ma'am, I know," Michael replied with a smile. "Tomorrow, we're going to make sure everyone else knows it too." After checking into their rooms, Michael and his team gathered in the small hotel conference room that Mrs. Darlene had prepared for them. Maps of Wallace and blueprints for the new community center covered the tables. "You've got a busy afternoon ahead," Marcus said, checking his tablet. "Frank Thomas, the builder, will be here at 2, the bank manager at 3, and Mayor Ferrier wants to stop by around 4 to finalize the details for tomorrow." Michael nodded, looking out the window at the town he grew up in. From the 2nd floor of the Wallace Inn, he could see Main Street with its row of small businesses, many of the same ones from his childhood. "Amazing how little this place has changed," he said. Buzz joined him at the window. "Remember when we'd ride our bikes down to Dixon's drugstore for ice cream after playing ball all day?" Michael smiled. "Old man Dixon would always give us an AT extra scoop if we told him about our games." "He was your first sponsor, way before Nike," Buzz laughed. Just then, Michael noticed an elderly man walking slowly down the sidewalk, leaning on a cane. He recognized him immediately. "Is that Coach Durham?" Michael asked, pointing. Buzz squinted. "Sure is. Must be 80 years old now." Coach Durham had been Michael's middle school basketball coach, the first one who really saw his potential. "I'm going to say hello," Michael said suddenly. "I'll be right back." Before his team could object about keeping a low profile, Michael was out the door. He caught up with Coach Durham half a block away. "Excuse me, Coach," Michael said. The old man turned slowly, his eyes widening as he recognized the voice before. He even saw the face. "Michael Jordan," he said in amazement. "My stars, is that really you?" Michael grinned. "Yes, sir. It's me." Coach Durham shook his head in wonder. "What in the world are you doing back in Wallace?" "Just visiting," Michael said. "But I'd appreciate if you didn't tell anyone you saw me. It's kind of a surprise." The old coach nodded, his eyes twinkling. "For Miss Lula Mae, I bet. That grandmother of yours is something special." "Yes, sir, she sure is." They talked for a few minutes, with Coach Durham filling Michael in on his own grandchildren and how he still followed every Bulls game during Michael's playing days. "I always told everybody, I knew that boy when he couldn't make a layup to save his life," Coach Durham said with a chuckle. As they parted ways, the coach called after him. "Michael, I never got to tell you back then, but I'm proud of you, son. Not just for the basketball, for how you've carried yourself." Michael felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." Back at the hotel, Frank Thomas, the local builder, was waiting with detailed blueprints. A burly man with calloused hands, he'd been building houses in Wallace for 30 years. "Mr. Jordan," he said, shaking Michael's hand firmly. "It's an honor." "Just. Michael is fine," Michael replied, "and the honor's mine. You're helping me do something really special for my grandmother." They spread the blueprints across the table. The plans showed a beautiful 40,000 square foot building with a full-size basketball court, classrooms, a library, and a commercial kitchen. "We can break ground next month," Frank explained. "Should take about 14 months to complete." Michael pointed to the center of the blueprint. "And this area here will be the heart of the building, right?" Frank nodded. "Yes, sir. The Lula Mae Jordan Community Kitchen. Just like you wanted. A state-of-the-art kitchen where kids can learn to cook, and where meals will be prepared for anyone in the community who needs one." Michael smiled, imagining his grandmother's face when she saw these plans. The kitchen was the most important part to him. Lula Mae had always said that no one should ever go hungry, if she could help it. Growing up, their house was their neighborhood. Kids knew they could get a meal if things were tough at home. After Frank left, the bank manager arrived with the financial documents. Michael went through each one carefully, making sure everything was set up exactly as he wanted. The $10 million would be divided. Half in a trust for Lula Mae to use however she wanted, half to build and maintain the community center that would bear her name. "And you're sure this is structured in a way that she won't have to worry about taxes or management?" Michael asked. "Absolutely, Mr. Jordan," the banker assured him. "We've set it up so that she has complete access, but none of the headaches." As the afternoon wore on, Michael found himself increasingly drawn to the window, looking out at the town that had shaped him. There was the water tower he and his friends had once dared each other to climb, though none of them ever did. There was the church where Grandma Lula had dragged him every Sunday morning, no matter how tired he was from playing basketball the day before. And just visible in the distance was the spire of Emsley A. Laney High School, where his jersey now hung retired in the gym. Mayor Charlie Farrier arrived promptly at 4, his face breaking into a wide smile when he saw Michael. "Well, look at you," the mayor said, embracing him. "Still looking like you could suit up and drop 50 points tomorrow." "I don't know about that," Michael laughed. "My knees might have something to say about it." They sat down to go over the final details for tomorrow's surprise. "The community center is cleared out and ready," Mayor Farrier confirmed. "Your family will start arriving in the morning, and Teresa will bring your grandmother at noon, just like you planned." "And she really doesn't suspect anything?" Michael asked. The mayor shook his head. "Not a thing. Teresa told her it's just a small family lunch. You know your grandmother. She's probably more worried about what she's going to cook for everyone than anything else." That made Michael smile. It was so true. Lula Mae's first thought was always about taking care of others. "This is going to mean so much to this town, Michael," the mayor said seriously. "Kids here still look up to you. But this center, it's going to change lives for generations to come." Michael nodded. "That's the idea. It's what Grandma Lula has always been about, giving people a chance, helping them believe in themselves." As the evening fell, Michael stood alone at the window, watching as the streetlights came on along Main Street. Tomorrow, he would give his grandmother the surprise of her life. But tonight, he was just a boy from Wallace again, surrounded by the memories of the place that had made him who he was. "Should we order dinner, Michael?" Marcus asked, interrupting his thoughts. Michael turned from the window. "No, I think I'll walk down to Rose's Diner. Their fried chicken used to be almost as good as Grandma Lula's. Want company?" Buzz offered. Michael shook his head. "I need some time to think. I'll be fine." He pulled on a baseball cap and slipped out of the hotel. The April evening was mild, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of flowers and fresh-cut grass. Michael walked slowly down Main Street, hands in his pockets, nodding to the few people who passed by. Most didn't recognize him, or if they did, they respected his privacy. Rose's diner looked exactly as he remembered. Red vinyl booths, checkerboard floor, and photos of local sports teams on the walls. He spotted one of himself from high school, looking impossibly young in his Laney Buccaneers uniform. "Well, I'll be," said a voice behind the counter. "Michael Jordan in my diner again." Rose herself stood there, now in her 70s, but still wearing her signature pink apron. She'd been running this place since before Michael was born. "Hello, Miss Rose," Michael said with a smile. "Still make that fried chicken?" "For you?" "Absolutely." She guided him to a booth in the back, away from the windows. "Your grandmother was in here just yesterday, you know. Still brags about you like you're playing your first season." That made Michael smile. She always was my biggest fan. As he waited for his food, Michael pulled out the small wooden box he'd brought with him. Inside was his first paycheck from McDonald's, along with a few other mementos he'd saved. He planned to give this box to Lula May tomorrow as part of the surprise. His chicken arrived, and Michael took a bite, closing his eyes. "Almost as good as Grandma's," he said, making Rose laugh. "Nobody cooks better than Lula May. And don't you forget it," she replied. After dinner, Michael walked back to the hotel slowly, taking the long way around. He passed the elementary school where he'd first dribbled a basketball. He passed the church where Lula May had made sure he was in the pew every Sunday morning. He passed the library where she'd taken him to get books, even when he only wanted to play ball. "Education first, basketball second," she'd always say. Back at the hotel, Michael couldn't sleep. His mind was too full of memories and anticipation. He watched old home videos on his laptop, footage of family gatherings at Lula May's house, of holiday meals with too many people crammed around her small dining table, of Lula May dancing. In her kitchen while cooking Sunday dinner, around midnight, his sister Dolores called. "You ready for tomorrow, little brother?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Michael replied. "Is everyone set on their end?" "All your siblings will be there, and we've got cousins coming from as far as Atlanta. Teresa is all ready to bring. Grandma at noon. She thinks it's just a family lunch. And the photographers? 2 local guys, I trust. They'll be discreet. Don't worry, Michael. Everything's going to be perfect." After they hung up, Michael lay back on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about all the nights he'd spent under Lula May's roof as a child. How she'd worked 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to keep food on the table after his grandfather died. How she'd never complained, never asked for help, never made them feel poor even when money was tight. He remembered her hands, worn from work, but gentle when bandaging his scraped knees or brushing away his tears. He remembered her voice, firm when he misbehaved but soft when reading him bedtime stories. He remembered her laugh, a deep, joyful sound that filled the whole house. Tomorrow, he would finally be able to give back to the woman who had given him so much. Not just money. Lula May had never cared much about money, but recognition, a legacy that would live on long after both of them were gone. Michael finally drifted off to sleep around 2 a.m., the small wooden box of memories on the nightstand beside him. In his dreams, he was a boy again, shooting hoops on a dirt court, while Grandma Lula watched from the porch, calling out, "You can do better than that, Michael Jeffrey Jordan." And in his dreams, just as in real life, those words pushed him to try harder, to be better, to reach higher than anyone thought possible. Morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the hotel curtains. Michael woke, feeling more rested than he expected. Today was the day. The day he would finally give his grandmother the recognition she deserved. He dressed simply in dark jeans and a button-down shirt. No flashy jewelry, no designer logos, just Michael, the way Lula May had raised him to be. At 8:30 a.m., he got a text from his oldest brother, James. Just landed in Wilmington, driving to Wallace now. One by one, similar messages came in from his other siblings, Dolores, Larry, and Roslyn. They were all coming home for this special day. Michael called them all on a group video chat. "Everyone ready for Operation Grandma?" he asked, grinning. "Born ready," Larry replied. "Though I still can't believe we've kept this a secret from her. That woman knows everything that happens in Wallace before it happens." "Teresa's done an amazing job keeping her distracted," Dolores added. "Told her all about some made-up drama with her neighbors to keep her mind off why we're all suddenly coming to town on the same day." "Where are we meeting?" Roslyn asked. "Bee's Kitchen at 10, Michael answered. "We'll all have breakfast together before heading to the community center to make sure everything's ready." After grabbing coffee in the hotel lobby, Michael and his team headed to Bee's Kitchen, a small restaurant that had been a fixture in Wallace for over 50 years. The owner, Bee Johnson, had known the Jordan family since before Michael was born. Michael arrived first, slipping in the back door as arranged. Bee, a stout woman with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun, was waiting for him. "Look at you," she said, pulling him into a tight hug. "All grown up and still as handsome as ever." "Thanks, Miss B," Michael said, returning the hug. "You haven't changed a bit." She swatted his arm playfully. "Don't you lie to an old woman. Now come on back. I've got the private room all set up for your family." The room at the back of the restaurant was simple, but cozy, with a large table that could seat 15 people. Pictures of local sports teams and community events covered the walls. Michael spotted several of himself throughout the years. One by one, his siblings arrived. James, the oldest at 67, walked with a slight limp from an old construction injury, but still stood tall and proud. Dolores, always elegant even at 65, wore a beautiful dress and had her hair done specially for the occasion. Larry, just a year older than Michael at 62, had the same competitive gleam in his eye that had pushed Michael to improve his game as a kid. And Roslyn, the baby of the family at 60, still had the sweet smile that had made her everyone's favorite. "The Jordan 5 back together again," James said as they all hugged. "Grandma's going to lose her mind when she sees all of us in one place," Roslyn added. They settled around the table as Bee brought out plates heaped with Southern breakfast favorites: grits, eggs, bacon, and her famous biscuits with sausage gravy. "Y'all eat up now," she instructed. "Big day ahead." As they ate, the siblings shared stories about their grandmother, how she had shaped each of their lives in different ways. "Remember when she walked 3 miles in the rain to bring you your jersey when you forgot it?" James asked Michael. "Man, I was so embarrassed," Michael admitted. "Coach was going to bench me for being irresponsible. Then here comes Grandma, soaking wet, jersey in a plastic bag to keep it dry. And she never missed a single one of our games either," Larry added. "Not just Michael's, all of ours. Even when she had to work 2 shifts back to back, she'd find a way to be there," Dolores laughed. "Remember how she used to save every penny? She'd wash and reuse aluminum foil and plastic bags," Roslyn added. "Had a whole drawer full of them." "But she always found money for new shoes when we needed them," James said softly. "Even when I know she went without things herself." Michael nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. She never let us feel poor, even when times were tough. After Dad died, Larry said, referring to their grandfather, she could have sent us to live with other relatives. Would have been easier on her, but she kept us all together. That's just who she is, Dolores said. Family comes first, no matter what. As breakfast wound down, Michael's assistant Marcus arrived with a report on the final preparations. "Everything's set at the community center, sir," he told Michael. "The catering is in place, the audio-visual equipment is tested, and the presentation materials are ready." "And the special items?" Michael asked. "All there, just as you wanted." Michael checked his watch. It was 10:45 a.m. "We should head over. I want to make sure everything's perfect before Grandma arrives." They paid the bill, with Michael leaving Bea a tip that made her eyes widen, and headed to their cars. As they drove the short distance to the Wallace Community Center, Michael felt a mix of emotions: excitement, nervousness, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the woman who had made him the man he was today. The community center was a simple one-story building that had served the town for decades. Inside, it had been transformed. Photos of Lula May with her family over the years covered the walls. Tables were set with white cloths and spring flowers. A podium stood at the front of the room with a large screen behind it. And in the center, just as Michael had requested, was a beautiful wooden rocking chair with Lula May's name carved into the headrest. A throne for the Queen of the Jordan family. Beside the chair, Michael placed the small wooden box he'd brought from Chicago. His fingers lingered on it for a moment. Inside were not just memories, but the key to the surprise that would change Lula May's life, and the lives of many others in Wallace forever. Family members continued to arrive. Cousins, nieces, nephews, great-grandchildren. Many of them had never been in the same room together before. Some lived as far away as California and had flown in specially for this event. Michael greeted each one, thanking them for coming, making sure they understood that when Lula May arrived, they were to act as if this was just a small family lunch. Nothing more. At 11:45, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from his cousin Teresa. "We're leaving her house now. She's suspicious, but doesn't know what's up." ETA 15 minutes. Michael gathered everyone in a circle. "Okay, folks, this is it. Grandma's on her way. Remember, act normal at first. Let her get settled before we start the surprise. This is her day. Let's make it special." As the room hummed with anticipation, Michael took one last look around. The photos, the chair, the box, the family. All the elements were in place for a moment Lula May Jordan would never forget. Places. Everyone. Marcus called softly. They just pulled into the parking lot. The family members scattered to their assigned spots. Some sat at tables, pretending to be in casual conversation. Others stood near the refreshment table, acting as if they were just getting drinks. Michael positioned himself near the door, ready to be the first person Lula May would see. Through the window, he watched as Teresa helped Lula May from the car. His grandmother was dressed in her favorite blue church dress with a matching hat, her silver hair carefully styled beneath it. She walked slowly with her cane, but her back was straight and her head held high. At 92, Lula May Jordan still carried herself with dignity and grace. Michael's heart pounded. His palms were sweating. He, who had hit game-winning shots in NBA championships with millions watching, was nervous about surprising his grandmother. "Deep breath," Buzz whispered, appearing beside him. "She's going to love it." Outside, Teresa was playing her part perfectly. "Now, Grandma, remember, it's just a small family lunch. she was saying loudly enough for them to hear through the door. "Nothing fancy. You didn't need to wear your Sunday best." "Child, I've been dressing myself for 92 years, came Lula May's crisp reply. "I'll wear what I please to see my family." Michael couldn't help but smile. That was Grandma Lula, sharp as ever. "Why are we at the community center anyway?" Lula May was asking as they approached the door. "We could have eaten at my house. I made potato salad yesterday." "Grandma, I told you not to cook," Teresa said with practiced exasperation. "This is supposed to be a treat for you." "Humph," Lula May replied. "I've been feeding myself for 92 years. Don't need anybody treating me now." Michael glanced around one last time to make sure everything was perfect. The catering staff stood discreetly in the back. The photographers were hidden, but ready. Mayor Ferrier was in position near the side door, out of sight until his cue. Tea! Doorknob turned. Michael took a deep breath as Lula May Jordan stepped into the community center. For a moment, she didn't see him, her eyes adjusting to the indoor light. Then her gaze found his face. "Michael Jeffrey Jordan," she exclaimed, using his full name like she did when he was a boy. She hadn't seen him in person for several months. Because of his busy schedule, she hurried to hug him, moving faster than anyone expected for a woman her age. "My baby boy came home," she said, touching his face like she couldn't believe he was real. Michael wrapped his arms around her small frame, careful not to squeeze too tight. She felt more fragile than he remembered, though her spirit was as strong as ever. "Hi, Grandma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Only then did Lula May notice that the whole family was there. Her eyes widened as she saw all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren in one place. "What in the world?" she said, looking around. "What's going on here?" James stepped forward. "Just a family gathering, Mama Lula. No big deal." But Lula May's eyes narrowed suspiciously. She'd raised these children. She knew when they were up to something. "My birthday's not for 3 more months," she said, looking from face to face. "And it ain't Christmas, so what are y'all up to?" Michael took her arm gently. "Can't we just want to spend time with the best grandmother in the world?" She replied, clearly not convinced. But she allowed Michael to lead her to the special chair they'd prepared. When she saw the rocking chair with her name carved into it, she stopped. "What's this?" she asked. "Just a comfortable seat for you, Grandma," Michael said. "You like it?" Lula May ran her fingers over the carved name. "It's too nice for me," she said, but she sat down, adjusting her dress primly. The family gathered around, making small talk, asking about her garden, her church activities, her neighbors. Lula May answered their questions, but her sharp eyes kept darting around the room, taking in details. The photos on the walls, the catered food, the unusual number of family members present. "Something's going on," she said finally, interrupting a story Dolores was telling. "Y'all might as well tell me what it is." The family exchanged glances. They'd planned to wait until after lunch for the big reveal, but Lula May Jordan had never been one to be kept in the dark. Michael nodded slightly to Marcus, who dimmed the lights. The room fell silent. "Grandma Lula," Michael began, kneeling beside her chair. "You're right. This isn't just a family lunch. We're here today because we have something special to share with you." Lula May looked at him, a mixture of curiosity and wariness in her eyes. "What kind of something?" Michael reached for the small wooden box beside her chair. "This box holds memories I've kept since I was a boy. Memories of the lessons you taught me. Memories of how you shaped me into the man I am today." He placed the box in her lap. "But before you open it, I want everyone here to know what you mean to me. To all of us. Michael stood and faced the gathered family. Today, we honor the woman who held us together when times were tough. The woman who worked 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to keep food on our table. The woman who never gave up on us, even when we gave up on ourselves. He turned back to Lula May, whose eyes were beginning to shine with tears. Grandma, today is all about you. Lula May Jordan looked around at her family. 4 generations gathered in one room, all looking at her with love and anticipation. She clutched the wooden box in her lap, her weathered hands trembling slightly. I don't need all this fuss, she said, but her voice caught with emotion. Yes, you do, Grandma, Michael said gently. For once in your life, let us celebrate you. He nodded to Marcus, who started a video on the large screen. It began with old home movies of Lula May as a young woman, holding baby Michael in her arms. Then came clips of her teaching him to tie his shoes, standing at the stove stirring a pot of collard greens, cheering at his basketball games. The video continued with recent interviews from community members in Wallace, people whose lives Lula May had touched over the decades. Miss Lula May gave my kids dinner every Wednesday when I was working the night shift, said Mrs. Williams, her neighbor of 40 years. Never asked for a thing in return. When my husband died and I couldn't pay the rent, Lula May showed up. With an envelope full of cash, added Mrs. Turner from her church. Said it was just a loan, but she never let me pay her back. She taught Sunday school for 30 years, said Pastor Green. Raised half the children in this town with her wisdom and love. By the time the video ended, tears were flowing freely down Lula May's cheeks. Michael handed her a tissue. Open the box, Grandma, he said softly. With shaking hands, Lula May lifted the lid of the wooden box. Inside was Michael's first paycheck from McDonald's, now faded with age. Beneath it were other mementos, a ribbon from a 3rd-grade spelling bee, a handwritten note from Lula May encouraging him after he was cut from the varsity team, a photo of her in the stands at his first NBA game. You kept all this? She asked, in wonder. Of course I did, Michael replied. You taught me the value of remembering where I came from. He reached into the box and pulled out a sealed envelope that had been hiding beneath the mementos. And this is for you, Grandma, from all of us, but especially from me. Lula May took the envelope, looking at it suspiciously. What is this? You. No, I don't take charity, even from my own grandbabies. It's not charity, Grandma. It's a thank you for everything you've done for us. With meticulous care, Lula May opened the envelope and pulled out the legal documents inside. She squinted at them, then reached for the reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. As she read, her expression changed from confusion to disbelief. She looked up at Michael, then back at the papers. $10 million? She whispered, so softly that only those closest to her could hear. Michael Jeffrey Jordan, have you lost your mind? A ripple of laughter went through the room. That was Grandma Lula, never one to mince words, even when receiving the gift of a lifetime. I'm in my right mind, Grandma, Michael assured her. Half of that money is for you, to do whatever you want with it. Buy a new house, travel the world, help others, anything you want. What would I do with a new house? Lula May demanded. My memories are in the old one. Then keep your house and renovate it. Or don't. It's your choice. That's the point. You've spent your whole life taking care of others. Now it's time for you to do what makes you happy. Lula May shook her head, clearly overwhelmed. And the other half of this money? It says here it's for something called the Lula Mae Jordan Community Foundation. What's that? This was Michael's cue. He nodded to Mayor Ferrier, who stepped forward, from the side of the room carrying a large covered display board. "Mrs. Jordan," the mayor said formally, "it is my honor, as the mayor of Wallace, to present to you the plans for the new Lula Mae Jordan Community Center." He pulled away the cloth, covering the board, revealing architectural renderings of a beautiful building. It showed a modern facility with large windows, welcoming entrances, and spaces designed for community gathering. "We break ground next month, right here in Wallace," Michael explained. "It will have a full-size basketball court, classrooms, ATI library, and, most importantly, a commercial kitchen that will serve free meals to anyone who needs one." Lula Mae's hand flew to her mouth. "A kitchen?" "Yes, Grandma. You always said you wished you could feed all the hungry children in town. Now you can." The mayor stepped forward again. "The town has donated the land, Mrs. Jordan, and your grandson has ensured that the center will be maintained and staffed forever. Your legacy will live on for generations to come." Lula Mae sat very still, staring at the plans. The room fell silent, everyone waiting for her reaction. Then, to everyone's surprise, a single tear rolled down her cheek. In all his life, Michael had rarely seen his grandmother cry. She was the rock of the family, the strong one who held everyone else together through their tears. Seeing that tear now, he knew how deeply she was touched. "Grandma?" he asked gently. "What do you think?" Lula Mae looked up at him, then around at her assembled family. Her eyes, though wet with tears, were clear and bright. "I think," she said slowly, "that this is way too much fuss for an old woman who just did what needed doing." Then she smiled, a radiant smile that lit up her entire face. "But since you went to all this trouble, I suppose I'll have to accept it." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Family members surged forward to hug Lula Mae, who remained seated in her special chair like a queen holding court. Michael stood back, watching the scene with a full heart. For the first time in her life, his grandmother was allowing herself to be celebrated, to receive instead of give. And that, more than any basketball championship, felt like his greatest victory. Once the initial excitement settled, the family gathered around tables for lunch. The caterers served Lula Mae's favorite foods: fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, and sweet potato pie. Though everyone agreed nothing tasted quite as good as when Lula Mae made it herself. "This chicken is missing something," Lula Mae said after taking a bite. "They didn't use enough paprika." The family laughed. Even on her big day, Grandma Lula couldn't help but critique the cooking. "Next time, we'll have you supervise the kitchen, Grandma," Michael promised. As they ate, Lula Mae kept shaking her head in disbelief, looking from the legal documents to the architectural plans and back again. "I still can't believe you did all this," she said to Michael. $10 million. Lord have mercy." "You deserve every penny, Grandma," Michael replied. "And so does this town. It's not my birthday for 3 more months," she reminded him. "What made you do this now?" Michael smiled. "I've been planning it for a long time, Grandma, just waiting for the right moment." "Well, it certainly surprised me," Lula Mae admitted. "And I'm not easy to surprise." "That's the truth," James laughed. "Remember when we tried to throw you a surprise party for your 70th birthday? You had already baked your own cake before we even got there." The family roared with laughter, and Lula Mae joined in. "Well, I knew y'all would forget the lemon extract in the frosting. Had to take matters into my own hands. As the meal continued, Lula May began telling stories about raising 9 grandchildren after her husband died. It was a side of family history that even some of the younger generation had never heard in detail. "When your grandfather passed," she said, addressing the whole room but looking at Michael, "I had just turned 49. 9 grandchildren to feed and clothe, and barely enough money to keep the lights on." The room grew quiet. Lula May rarely spoke about those difficult days. "I'd work all day at the school cafeteria, then clean offices at night. Come home, cook dinner, help with homework, then mend clothes until my fingers were raw." She held up her hands, now gnarled with arthritis but still strong. "These hands have scrubbed a lot of floors to keep food on the table. But we always had enough. Maybe not what we wanted, but what we needed." "You never complained," Dolores said softly. "Not once." "What good would complaining do?" Lula May asked. "Life gives you what it gives you. It's what you do with it that matters," she pointed at Michael. "This one here always wanted new sneakers. Every month seemed like. Feet growing like weeds." Everyone laughed, including Michael. "But you always found a way to get them for me." "Grandma," he said. Lula May nodded. "Had to. Couldn't have my boy playing basketball in shoes with holes. What would people think?" Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "You know, I used to put $5 from each paycheck into a special jar. Called it my Michael's Shoes Fund. Because I knew you had something special in you. I could see it even when you were little." Michael had never heard this before. The thought of his grandmother, working for minimum wage, setting aside money specifically for his basketball shoes, brought a lump to his throat. "When you got cut from the varsity team," Lula May continued, "I almost took that money and bought something for myself. Thought maybe I'd been wrong about your talent." She smiled at the memory. "But then I saw you practicing in the backyard until midnight for weeks straight. And I knew then that you had more than talent. You had heart. So I kept saving for those shoes." The room was silent now, everyone hanging on Lula May's words. Even family members who had known her all their lives were hearing new stories. "When you got that scholarship to North Carolina," she went on, "people said, 'Lula May, your grandson's going to be rich someday. You'll never have to work again.'" She chuckled. "I told them, I'm not raising my grandson to take care of me. I'm raising him to take care of himself and help others when he can." Michael nodded, tears in his eyes. That was exactly what she had taught him. "And look at you now," Lula May said, gesturing at the architectural plans for the community center. "Helping others in a way I never could. Making sure no child in Wallace goes hungry. That means more to me than any amount of money you could give me personally." She reached for Michael's hand. "You did good, boy. You did real good." The simple praise from his grandmother hit Michael harder than any accolade he'd ever received. All the MVP awards, the championship rings, the Hall of Fame induction, none of it compared to those 6 words from Grandma Lula. The youngest great-grandchild, 7-year-old Amara, approached Lula May's chair. "Great-grandma, are you rich now?" she asked with a child's directness. The adults tensed, but Lula May just laughed. "Child, I've been rich all my life. Rich in family, rich in love. The money's just paper." Then she pulled Amara onto her lap. "But yes, I suppose I am rich now, in the way people usually mean it. And you know what I'm going to do with some of that money?" "What?" Amara asked, wide-eyed. "I'm going to make sure you and all your cousins can go to college without worrying about how to pay for it. Education is something no one can ever take from you." As lunch wound down, Mayor Farrier approached Lula May again. Mrs. Jordan, the town council would like to honor you at our next meeting. Would you be willing to attend so we can present you with a key to the city?" Lula May shook her head. "No need for all that, Charlie. You've known me since you were in diapers. I'm just Lula May. You're a lot more than just anything, Mrs. Jordan," the mayor replied respectfully. "You've touched countless lives in this town, including mine. That deserves recognition." Lula May considered this, then nodded slowly. "Well, if it means that much to you, I suppose I could come. But no long speeches about me, you hear? Keep it short and simple. Sut." "Yes, ma'am," the mayor agreed with a smile. "Short and simple." As lunch finished, Michael glanced at his watch. There was one more part of the surprise, perhaps the most important, that he had been saving for this moment. He caught Marcus's eye and nodded slightly. Marcus slipped out of the room to make a final preparation. Michael stood up and tapped his glass for attention. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. He moved to stand beside Lula May's chair. "Grandma Lula," he began, his voice cracking with emotion. "When I was 10 years old, I asked you why we couldn't have a bigger house. Remember what you said?" Lula May nodded, her eyes warm with the memory. "I told you a house isn't what makes a home. It's the love inside it." "That's right," Michael continued. "You worked 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to keep us fed. You never bought yourself new clothes so we could have school supplies. You believed in me when no one else did." He paused, gathering himself. The room was so quiet you could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. "When Coach cut me from the varsity team, you told me, Jordans don't quit. Failure just means you need to try harder." Those words shaped my entire life, Grandma. Every time I faced a challenge, in basketball, in business, in life, I heard your voice in my head, pushing me to be better. Lula May reached up and patted his hand. "You did all the hard work, child. I just gave you a little push now and then." "You gave me a lot more than that," Michael replied. "You gave me values. You taught me to respect others, to work hard, to give back when I could. Everything I've accomplished traces back to the lessons you taught me right here in Wallace." Michael took her hand and helped her to her feet. The family formed a circle around them, sensing that something special was about to happen. "Today isn't just about giving you money, Grandma. Money is just paper, like you said. Today is about recognizing the legacy you've built. A legacy of love, service, and community." He gestured, and Marcus returned, carrying a large framed document. Michael took it and held it so Lula May could see. "This is the charter for the Lula May Jordan Community Foundation. It states that the foundation's mission is to continue your life's work, feeding the hungry, supporting education, and strengthening family bonds in Wallace and beyond." Lula May adjusted her glasses to read the document. Her lips moved silently as she absorbed the formal language. "And you'll notice," Michael continued, "that the board of directors is made up entirely of family members. Your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren will carry on your legacy for generations to come." Lula May's hands trembled as she touched the framed charter. "All my babies, working together?" "Yes, Grandma, working together to continue what you started. 3 generations of Jordans, united by your example." Tears shone in Lula May's eyes again. "That's more precious than any amount of money." Michael wasn't finished. He nodded to Marcus again, who brought forward a small velvet box. "There's one more thing, Grandma." Michael opened the box to reveal a simple gold key on a ribbon. "This is the key to the future Lula May Jordan Community Center. Once it's built, it will belong to the foundation, to our family, to continue your mission of service." Michael placed the ribbon around Lula May's neck. The key rested against her blue dress, catching the light. With this key, you're not just opening a building, Grandma. You're opening doors of opportunity for countless children in Wallace. Children who, like me, might need just a little push to discover their potential. Lula May touched the key, then looked up at Michael. Her eyes, though wet with tears, were clear and determined. "I accept this responsibility," she said firmly. "And I expect every one of you," she looked around at the gathered family, "to do your part. This isn't about having your name on a building. It's about service, about lifting others up." She squared her shoulders, suddenly looking decades younger, filled with purpose. "I may be 92 years old, but the good Lord has kept me here for a reason. And maybe this is it, to see my family united in service to others." The room erupted in applause. Family members surged forward to hug Lula May, who stood tall and proud, the key gleaming against her blue dress. Michael stepped back, watching with pride as his grandmother took command of the moment. This was why he had created the foundation in her name, not just to honor her past contributions, but to give her a new purpose, a new mission for however many years she had left. When the excitement settled, Michael noticed Lula May looking thoughtfully at the architectural plans for the community center. "Something on your mind, Grandma?" he asked. "This kitchen," she said, pointing to the blueprint. "It needs to be bigger. If we're going to feed hungry children, we need more space." Michael laughed. "Consider it done. Anything else?" Lula May studied the plans carefully. The classrooms should be near the kitchen. Kids can learn math by measuring ingredients, science by understanding how bread rises, history through cultural food traditions. Michael nodded, impressed by her practical wisdom. "We'll redesign it according to your specifications. And one more thing," Lula May added. "I want to teach cooking classes myself, at least until these old hands can't hold a spoon anymore." "Grandma, you can teach anything you want in that center," Michael assured her. "It's yours." Lula May looked up at him, her eyes shining with purpose. "No, child, it's not mine. It belongs to this community, to the future. We're just the caretakers." In that moment, Michael understood why his grandmother had been able to raise 9 grandchildren on a shoestring budget. Why she had been the heart of her community for decades. Why her influence extended far beyond her modest circumstances. It wasn't just her hard work or her sacrifice. It was her vision, her ability to see beyond immediate needs to the greater purpose. Lula May Jordan had always understood what truly mattered. And now, with the resources to match her vision, there was no limit to what she might accomplish. "You know what, Grandma?" Michael said softly. "I think I'm still learning from you." Lula May reached up and cupped his cheek in her weathered hand. "That's as it should be, child. That's as it should be." After the emotional high of the presentations, the family settled into a more relaxed celebration. Children played in one corner of the community center, while adults caught up on family news. Lula May remained in her special chair, holding court as relatives came to sit with her one by one. Michael watched from across the room, content to see his grandmother enjoying herself. The wooden box that had held his childhood mementos sat on a small table beside her. He noticed that she kept reaching over to touch it, as if making sure it was still there. Finally, as the afternoon light began to fade, Michael approached her again. He picked up the wooden box and sat down next to her. "You seem pretty interested in this old box, Grandma," he said. "I thought the $10 million would be the highlight." Lula May chuckled. "Money comes and goes, Michael. But memories? Those are priceless." She reached for the box, and Michael handed it to her. She opened it again, this time taking more time to examine each item inside. "This paycheck," she said, holding up the faded slip from McDonald's. "Your first one. I remember how proud you were. You told me to save it," Michael replied. "You said someday I might need it." "And did you? Need it, I mean?" Michael shook his head. "Not the money, but the reminder? Yes. Every time I signed a new contract worth millions, I'd think about this first paycheck. About how hard I worked for just a few dollars. It kept me grounded." Lula May nodded approvingly. "That's what I hoped it would do." She continued through the box, finding the ribbon from his third-grade spelling bee. "You were so nervous that day," she recalled. "Kept practicing your words all morning." "I remember you quizzing me at breakfast," Michael said. "You made flashcards and everything." "Education was always important to me," Lula May said. "Basketball was your gift, but I wanted to make sure you had a good mind, too." She pulled out the note she'd written to him after he was cut from the varsity team. The paper was creased and worn, suggesting Michael had unfolded and read it many times over the years. "Dear Michael," she read aloud, "don't let today's disappointment stop you from reaching for tomorrow's success. You're a Jordan. We don't quit. Love, Grandma." She looked up at him. "You really kept this all these years?" "I kept it in my locker through high school and college," Michael admitted. "Before every big game, I would read it. It reminded me that I had someone who believed in me no matter what." Lula May's eyes misted over. "I had no idea." "There's a lot you don't know about how much you influenced me, Grandma," Michael said softly. She reached the bottom of the box and found something unexpected. A small purple pouch made of velvet. "What's this? I don't remember this." "That's new," Michael explained. "I added it this morning." Lula May opened the pouch carefully and tipped the contents into her palm. Out fell a simple gold ring with a small diamond. She gasped. "This is my wedding ring," she whispered. "I had to sell it after your grandfather died, to pay the property taxes on the house." "How did you—" "I tracked it down," Michael said. "It took 3 private investigators and a lot of searching. But we found the pawn shop owner who bought it. He had kept it all these years, thinking it might be valuable someday because of the connection to our family." Lula May slipped the ring onto her finger. It was tight over her arthritic knuckle, but it fit. 43 years I've been without this ring. I never thought I'd see it again." "You sacrificed everything for us, Grandma," Michael said. "Your time, your energy, even your precious mementos. I wanted to give something back that money alone couldn't buy." Lula May stared at the ring on her finger, turning her hand to catch the light. "Your grandfather bought this ring with money he saved for 2 years. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it meant the world to me." She looked up at Michael, her eyes shining. "This means more to me than the $10 million, child. This is my history, my heart." Michael took her hand, the one with the ring now restored to its rightful place. "You gave us all a foundation to build our lives on, Grandma. I wanted to make sure you knew how much that meant to all of us." Lula May squeezed his hand. "I know, baby. I've always known." She looked around the room at her extended family. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all together because of her. Because she had held the family together through the hardest times, had refused to let them be separated, had worked herself to the bone to give them what they needed to thrive. "This is my real legacy," she said, gesturing to the family. "Not a building with my name on it, not a foundation, but these people, the love between us." Michael nodded. The building and the money are just tools, Grandma, ways to extend what you've already built. Your real gift to all of us can't be measured in dollars. Lula May closed the box gently, running her fingers over the smooth wood. Thank you for keeping these memories safe, Michael. And thank you for bringing my ring back to me. She slipped the box into her purse, alongside the legal documents that would change her life forever. The old and the new, side by side, just as it should be. As the afternoon progressed, Michael noticed his grandmother starting to tire. At 92, even excitement took its toll. He was about to suggest they wrap up the celebration when Marcus caught his eye and nodded slightly. It was time for the final surprise, the one that even most of the family didn't know about. Michael helped Lula May to her feet. There's something else I want to show you, Grandma. More surprises? Lula May asked, raising an eyebrow. Michael Jeffrey Jordan, how many surprises does one old woman need in a day? Michael grinned. Just one more, Grandma. I promise this is the last one. He gestured for the family to follow as he guided Lula May toward a large covered display at the far end of the community center. It had been there all day, hidden beneath a blue cloth, waiting for this moment. What is that? Lula May asked, eyeing the covered display suspiciously. Something special, Michael replied. Something that goes beyond the money and the building. The Prussian family gathered around, curious. Michael positioned Lula May directly in front of the display, then stepped back. Grandma, you've always said that a house isn't what makes a home. It's the love inside it. And you've always said that your small house on Duplin Street holds all your memories, which is why you never wanted to move. Lula May nodded. That's right. My memories are in those walls. Well, Michael continued, we wanted to respect that, while still giving you a home worthy of you. He nodded to Marcus, who pulled away the cloth to reveal a detailed architectural model and large display. Boards, but these weren't for the community center. They showed a familiar small white house, Lula May's house, transformed but still recognizable. This is the renovation plan for your home, Michael explained. We're not building you a new house. We're making your existing house better, while preserving everything you love about it. Lula May stepped closer, adjusting her glasses to see the details. The model showed her small house expanded and updated, but with the original structure at its heart. The front porch where she'd spent so many evenings was still there, just wider and with a proper roof. The kitchen where she'd cooked thousands of family meals was larger, but in the same location. We worked with the best historical renovation architects in North Carolina, Michael explained. They specialize in preserving the character and memories of a home while making it more comfortable. Lula May circled the model slowly, taking in every detail. My bedroom is still in the same place, she observed. Yes, ma'am. But now it has an attached bathroom, so you don't have to walk down the hall at night. And there's a walk-in shower with handrails. And my garden? She asked, looking for it in the model. Expanded, Michael said proudly. 3 times the size, with raised beds so you don't have to bend down so much. And a greenhouse for year-round growing. Lula May's fingers traced the outline of the model greenhouse. I could grow tomatoes in winter, she said softly. Yes, you could, she continued, examining the model, asking questions about each part. What's this room here? She asked, pointing to a new addition at the back of the house. That's the family room, Michael explained. Big enough for everyone to gather at once. No more cramming into your small living room or splitting up into different rooms during holidays. Tears welled in Lula May's eyes. You thought of everything. We tried to, Michael said. The construction will take about 4 months. During that time, you'll stay in a fully furnished house we've rented 2 streets over. You can walk to check on the progress every day if you want. And all my things, my furniture, my photos, everything will be carefully packed and stored. Anything you want, kept exactly as is, we'll make sure it stays that way. This is still your house, Grandma. We're just making it work better for you and for our growing family. Lula May turned to face the gathered family members. Did you all know about this? Some nodded. Others shook their heads. Michael had kept this part of the surprise limited to just a few people to ensure it stayed secret. Your great-grandchildren need a place to come that feels like home, Michael said. A place where they can connect with their history. This renovation ensures your house will stand for another 100 years, welcoming generations of Jordans yet to come. He handed Lula May a thick binder. These are all the plans, down to the smallest detail. If there's anything you don't like, anything you want changed, just say the word. This project doesn't move forward without your complete approval. Lula May hugged the binder to her chest. I never thought... I always worried what would happen to the house after I'm gone, whether the family would keep it or sell it to strangers. It will stay in the family forever, Michael assured her. We've set up a trust specifically for maintaining the house. Your home will always be our family's anchor in Wallace. Lula May looked again at the model, then at the binder in her arms, then at the faces of her family surrounding her. For a moment, she seemed overwhelmed by it all. The money, the community center, the foundation, and now this. Then she squared her shoulders and spoke with the clarity and authority that had guided the family for decades. Well, I do have one request about this renovation. Anything, Grandma, Michael promised. That back porch needs to be bigger, she said decisively. If we're going to have family gatherings, we need space for the grill and the smoker. Can't have proper Jordan family meals without smoked ribs and chicken. The family burst out laughing. Even with a $10 million gift and a custom home renovation, Grandma Lula was still focusing on how to better feed her family. Consider it done, Michael said, grinning. And one more thing, she added. I want a room in this house designated as a study space for the children, with computers and books and everything they need for schoolwork. Education matters. Michael nodded, deeply moved by her priorities. Even with unlimited resources at her disposal, Lula May focused on family meals and children's education, the same values she had emphasized when they barely had enough to get by. You know what, Grandma? He said. I think we should name the library and the community center after you too. The Lula May Jordan Library. Because you've always understood that feeding minds is just as important as feeding bodies. Lula May smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I'd like that, she said simply. As the family continued to examine the house plans, exclaiming over details and sharing ideas, Michael stepped back and watched his grandmother. She stood a little straighter now, energized despite the long day. The renovation plans had done something the money alone couldn't do. They had given her assurance that her legacy, her home, and her values would continue long after she was gone. And that, Michael knew, was the greatest gift of all. As evening approached, the celebration began to wind down. Children were getting tired, and some family members with long drives ahead needed to start heading home. One by one, they came to say goodbye to Lula May, who gave each a warm hug and made them promise to visit again soon. Don't be strangers. Now, she told them. Just because we had a fancy party today doesn't mean you can't come by for Sunday dinner next week. Michael arranged for Teresa to drive Lula May home. After such an emotional day, he wanted to make sure his grandmother had a quiet evening to process everything that had happened. "I'll come by tomorrow morning, Grandma," he promised, as he helped her into Teresa's car. "We can talk more about the plans then." Lula May patted his cheek. "You've given me a lot to think about, child." As the car pulled away, Michael felt both, exhausted and exhilarated. The day had gone even better than he'd hoped. His grandmother had accepted his gifts with grace and had already begun making them her own, putting her practical stamp on the projects in a way that only Lula May could. Back at the hotel that evening, Michael and his siblings gathered in his suite to decompress. They ordered room service and reflected on the day's events. "I still can't believe you found Grandma's wedding ring," Dolores said, shaking her head in wonder. "How did you even know she'd sold it?" "She mentioned it once, years ago," Michael explained. "Just in passing. But it stuck with me. I knew it must have been devastating for her to part with something so precious." "That's our brother," Larry said, proudly, always paying attention to the details that matter. They were interrupted by a call from Teresa. Michael put it on speakerphone so everyone could hear. "Just wanted to let you know that Grandma is safely home," Teresa reported. "But there's something you should know. She's been on the phone non-stop since we got back. I don't know who she's calling, but she sounds excited." The siblings exchanged puzzled glances. "Thanks for letting us know," Michael said. "As long as she's okay, that's what matters." After they hung up, speculation ran wild about who Lula May might be calling. Was she telling distant relatives about her surprise? Talking to her church friends? Making plans already for the community center? "I guess we'll find out tomorrow," Michael said finally. "Grandma's entitled to her privacy." The next morning, Michael arrived at Lula May's house just after 9 a.m., carrying fresh pastries from the local bakery. He found her already dressed and sitting on her front porch, as if she'd been waiting for him. "Good morning, Grandma," he called, as he walked up the path. "Brought your favorite apple fritters." "Come sit, Michael," she said, patting the space beside her on the porch swing. "We need to talk." Something in her tone made Michael pause. She didn't seem upset, exactly, but there was a seriousness to her manner that hadn't been there yesterday. "Is everything okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Was it too much yesterday? Because we can scale back anything you're not comfortable with." Lula May shook her head. "No, child. It was a beautiful day. A day I'll never forget." She took his hand in hers, her wedding ring now back in its rightful place on her finger. "But there's something I need to say. Something I need to give you in return." "Grandma, you don't need to give me anything," Michael protested. "This was about giving back to you after all you've done for us." Lula May's eyes twinkled. "Michael, Jeffrey Jordan, you think you can outgive your grandmother?" Before Michael could respond, a car pulled up in front of the house. Then another, and another. Soon, the street was lined with vehicles, and people began emerging from them. Dozens of people, many of whom Michael recognized from his childhood in Wallace. "Grandma?" he asked, confused. "What's going on?" Lula May stood up, surprisingly spry for her 92 years. "After I got home last night, I started making calls. Called everyone I could think of who knew you growing up. Teachers, coaches, neighbors, friends. Asked them to bring what they had." The people approached the porch, each carrying something in their hands. Some held photographs. Others had newspaper clippings, report cards, basketball programs, handwritten notes, all related to Michael's childhood and teenage years in Wallace. "Miss Lula May asked us to come," explained Mr. Peterson, Michael's fifth-grade teacher. Said, "It was important. Come inside, everyone," Lula May called, leading the way into her small living room. It was cramped with so many visitors, but no one seemed to mind. One by one, they presented their mementos to Michael. His elementary school principal had kept his perfect attendance certificate from second grade. His Sunday school teacher had a drawing he'd made of his family when he was 6. Coach Durham had the score sheet from the first game, where Michael scored more than 20 points. Michael was overwhelmed. "I don't understand," he said, looking from the pile of memorabilia to his grandmother. Lula May reached into her purse and pulled out a worn envelope. "I've been saving too," she said with a gentle smile. She handed the envelope to Michael. Inside were dozens of items, newspaper clippings of every game he'd played, from high school through his final championship with the Bulls. There were handwritten notes documenting his achievements, report cards from every grade, photos from graduations, draft day, championship celebrations. "You kept all of this?" Michael asked, astonished. "Every bit," Lula May confirmed. "Been collecting your whole life, and not just the basketball stuff. See here." She pointed to a certificate from his 4th grade science fair. "Second place. You were so mad you didn't win first, but I was just as proud of this as any championship trophy." Michael thumbed through the collection, amazed at the thoroughness of it. "But why are you showing me this now, Grandma?" Lula May smiled, her eyes bright with emotion. "Because you gave me your memories yesterday. Today, I'm giving you mine. All these people, they're part of your story too. Part of what made you who you are." She gestured around the crowded room. "This is your real legacy, Michael. Not the money, not the fame, but the lives you've touched. The people who helped raise you. The community that still remembers when you were just a skinny boy with big dreams." Michael looked around at the faces. Teachers who had pushed him academically, coaches who had developed his athletic skills, neighbors who had watched out for him when Lula May was working late. Each had played a role in his journey. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And thank you for keeping these memories." For the next hour, Michael listened to stories about himself as a child. Some he remembered, others he'd forgotten, and a few he'd never heard before. They talked about his determination, his competitiveness, but also his kindness and his respect for others. He always said, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, sir," recalled Mrs. Jenkins, who had lived next door during Michael's childhood. Even when the other boys were getting too big for their britches, Michael remembered his manners. "That was Grandma's doing," Michael said, smiling at Lula May. "She'd give me the look if I forgot." Everyone laughed, knowing exactly which look he meant. As the impromptu gathering began to wind down, people started to leave, each taking a moment to hug Lula May and shake Michael's hand. Soon, only Michael, Lula May, and Teresa remained. "That was quite a surprise, Grandma," Michael said, helping her clean up the cups and plates left behind. "You orchestrated that as carefully as I planned yesterday's event." Lula May smiled. "I've had practice organizing family gatherings, child. Been doing it for 70 years. When the house was tidy again, they sat together on the front porch, watching as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard. The renovation would start in a few weeks, transforming this modest house into a home that would serve the family for generations to come. "I've been thinking about the community center," Lula May said, after a comfortable silence, "about the programs we should offer." "What do you have in mind?" Michael asked. "Reading programs for the little ones, job training for teenagers, cooking classes that teach nutrition on a budget." Her eyes lit up as she shared her vision. "And mentoring. Lots of mentoring. Connecting our elders with our youth so the wisdom doesn't get lost." Michael nodded, impressed. but not surprised by her practical, community-focused ideas. "We'll make it happen, Grandma. All of it." "I know you will," she said confidently. "You've never been one to do things halfway." They rocked gently on the porch swing, enjoying the peaceful moment after 2 emotional days. Michael realized how rare it was now for him to experience such simple pleasures. Sitting on a porch, with no schedule to keep, no phone calls to return, just being present with someone he loved. "There's something else I want to tell you, Lula," May said, breaking the silence. Her voice had taken on a more serious tone. "Something I've kept to myself for a long, long time." Michael turned to look at her. "What is it, Grandma?" Lula May reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was old, and had been folded and unfolded many times over the years. "Before I show you this, I want you to know that I only kept it secret because I promised I would, and a Jordan keeps their promises." Michael nodded, curious but patient. Lula May had earned the right to tell her stories in her own time. She carefully unfolded the paper. It was a letter, the handwriting faded, but still legible. "This came from your paternal great-grandfather, William Jordan. He wrote it to me a week before he died, when your father was just a boy." Michael's eyes widened. He knew very little about his great-grandfather, who had died long before he was born. "William was a remarkable man," Lula May continued. "He was born in 1885, the son of a former slave. He taught himself to read by candlelight after working 14-hour days in the fields. Eventually, he saved enough to buy 20 acres of land. Unheard of for a black man in those days." Michael listened, transfixed. This was family history he'd never heard before. "In this letter," Lula May said, "William tells me about a special gift that runs in the Jordan family line. A gift that doesn't show up in every generation, but when it does, it creates something extraordinary." She leaned closer, lowering her voice even though no one else was around. "He called it the fire. Said you could see it in the eyes of those who had it. A burning determination, a refusal to accept limits, an ability to see beyond what others could see." Lula May handed the letter to Michael. "He told me to watch for it in his descendants. Said I'd recognize it if I saw it." Michael took the letter with reverent hands, reading his great-grandfather's words. The handwriting was strong and assured, despite being written by an elderly man in his final days. "When I first saw you play basketball at 7 years old," Lula May continued, "I knew you had it. That same fire William had described. It wasn't about your physical skills. Those would come later. It was something in your spirit, an unquenchable drive." Michael looked up from the letter. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" "William asked me not to tell anyone about the fire, unless I was absolutely sure they could handle the weight of knowing." She paused. "Success can make a person forget where they came from. I needed to be sure you wouldn't lose your way." She took his hand. "Yesterday, when you gave me that $10 million gift, not to show off your wealth, but to help others, I knew it was finally time. You've proven yourself worthy of knowing about your heritage." Lula May leaned in and whispered something in Michael's ear that made him freeze. His eyes widened, and tears streamed down his face. No one else could hear what she said. Michael pulled back and looked at his grandmother with new eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. "All these years," he whispered. "All these years, and you never told me." Lula May simply smiled and patted his hand. "Some gifts," she said loud enough for Teresa to hear, "are worth waiting for." Michael turned to his family, his face transformed. "We need to sit down," he said. "Grandma Lula has a story to tell us. A story that changes everything we thought we knew about our family." Teresa moved closer, her expression curious. Other family members who had been about to leave paused, sensing something momentous was happening. Lula May settled back in her chair, the weight of a lifelong secret finally lifting from her shoulders. She looked at the faces of her family gathering around her, eager to hear what she had to say. The story she was about to tell would explain so much about Michael's extraordinary talents, about his drive to succeed against all odds, about the legacy that connected them to a past more remarkable than any of them had imagined. But that story, and the secret Lula May had kept for over 70 years, remains untold to all but those who gathered on that porch on that spring day in Wallace, North Carolina. Where are you listening from today? We'd love to know which part of the world our stories are reaching. If you enjoyed this touching tale about family, legacy, and the true meaning of wealth, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We share inspiring stories like this one every week that remind us of the power of kindness and generosity. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family, not just to spread these messages of love and appreciation for our elders, but also to remind everyone that our true legacy isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch and the values we pass down. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.